we're going to take a look at how to make motifs that behave very well in your motif settings. One of the problems is that you end up with lock stitches, or you end up with underlay stitches, or you end up with needle drops or needle penetrations that when you resize them, these motifs just become too heavy to stitch. So I'm going to show you two ways to make a motif, and then you can decide which one works best for you. Okay, the first way, if we want to do a stitch such as the 7 bean stitch, we could select our running tool and come in here and say, well, let's just make this a run tool, right? And then we can left click. If we hold the control key, we get the perfect little line. So there's 1 over, 2 over, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Period. All right, so let's generate. And let's kind of zoom in. And if you're wondering what view I'm in, I'm just in my regular stitch view. But let's go over here to needle penetration view. And you can see I've got the tie-in stitches and I've got all these little stitches. Well, okay, we can kind of control some of that. Let's go to our stitch settings. In the property settings, I could say, well, I'm just on a run stitch, and don't use that tie stitch, and let's apply that. Well, I still have these stitches in here. All right, I can still control that. Let's go up here and say, well, our minimum step and our maximum step, let's change that maximum step to 7 and apply that. You can see I still have a couple in here. So let's go over to the basic tab, and the basic step has to be changed to 7 too. So let's apply it. And I still have those little stitches in there. So, let's go up to our line and the minimum step. Let's make this 6.75 and apply it. And I still have those little stitches. So I have to look at this, and maybe this needs to be 11. And that takes them out. So, okay, so now I just have these little stitches over here. Okay, well, I can control that a little bit if I did this in a smaller form. But nonetheless, I still have to worry about these stitches, right? So let's go ahead and say okay, and we'll generate that. So now I still have these little tiny stitches. I could go in and do a few things, or I can use a different tool. I can come over to my Create toolbar, and above the Generate icon, there's your magic wand, and then there's this little Insert Stitches tool. And if I select the Insert Stitches tool, what I can do is this. Come up to my grid, left click. There's my first point. I can't hold the control key, but I can be zoomed in like this, and there's my second point over. Okay, so line 1's there, line 2, line 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. I'm going to press enter. Okay, now I made this a little bit smaller, but it still won't make any difference. Even if I stretch this out and went all the way across here, what happens here is this. Let me zoom in really close. The only needle points that are made are the ones that I entered. Now I'm zoomed in 3000%, so I don't know that I'm going to worry so much about these points, but if I am worried and want those to be perfect, just go up to your edit icon in edit mode, and if I come over here and I left click on any of these little nodes or these little stitch points, I get a red X, and I can just left click and hold and drag those into position and align them a little bit better. Just remember to get your bullseye, left click. When you get the red X, press and hold your left mouse button in and just drag those into place. And you can do this for every stitch if you really want to line those up just so that they're perfectly lined. Alright, so now I'm going to show you the difference between these two. So let's go back out to 101. And let's go out of our needle penetration view. Okay, difference wise, they don't really look too much different. Here I could line that up a little bit better if I wanted to. But the difference is this. When I left click on this little run stitch has 19 stitches. And that's taking out our tie-ins and tie-offs. If I click on this, this has 8. The first stitch, and then each line across there. Huge difference in the stitch count because of how this was made. So this motif has 19 stitches. Not what I wanted. I want this to basically go back and forth without creating a lot of stitches. I just want a nice clean stitch. So this is going to give me some problems, and that was the one that was made with our running tool. If we use the insert stitches on this motif, let me kind of go ahead and get rid of that original one. If I use the insert stitches tool, it locks this, and that's true, but it doesn't matter. I don't have to worry about stitch lengths here, because when I use the insert stitches tool like I did here, I'm in total control of my stitch length. So there's, I'm just going to make this real quick. You can see I can place 3 stitches. Let's look at this in needle penetration view. 1 stitch, 2 stitch, and 3 stitch point. I'm in total control of the stitch length. And why that's advantageous for a motif is this. You go out of this and get rid of this, and yes, I want to get rid of it. Now my in and out points, in and out, they're still located where they need to be. I know that I'm going to start the line here and end it here. So now all I have to do is go to accessories, motif, save my motif, and I've already saved the 7OverMotif, so I'm going to go ahead and just left click on it and save it again and say yes. So now that's been saved, right? And here's the neat part about using a motif like that. Let me make a line, and let me go into my settings and go over to the motif setting. When I create a line like that, there's my 7over. It doesn't matter what size I make this. I'm going to make this 15. And I will of course have to change my column space. Here's my layout panel. If I don't change this space here or drag these across, which if you end up rotating them, don't panic. I like working with these numbers, so I'm going to put this at 0. My column space is going to match my stitch length here, or my motif size. And here's my layout panel. Now they're lining up nice, right? So let's go ahead and say OK and generate. Now why is that important? Well, here's what we look like in 3D. Big long stitches, right? Doesn't really show you too much. So let's zoom in right about in here, and let's go to our needle penetration view. The only place I have needle penetrations is right here where the motifs are matching up. I don't have anything in between here at all. So I can control that stitch length and have some pretty neat things. Now, of course, 15 is too big. It wouldn't work. It would be too big for your machine to really like. But say I wanted to make that 10. And I should have locked that, so let's change this to 10. And on my column space, to account for a little bit of pull compensation, I'm going to make this 9.9, not 10. And when I look at the layout panel, let's zoom up, there's a little tiny bit of overlap. So let's go ahead and say OK and generate. And you can see now I've got a little less of that double point here. Right in here is where they're meeting up. And I still have that nice, long, clean motif. So you can create a really neat motif by simply using your insert stitches tool and not have to worry about all those little needle points that are in, a regular running line type of motif.